Well, Dan,
Yes.
we've talked about this before, but remember when when we were kids? I think we talked about it when we were doing Exodus with you. There was a film that was kind of horrific called The Neverending Story, and then that was bafflingly followed up by The Neverending Story Part 2, where all the unanswered questions about the freaky sperm dragon were also not answered. So
You're gonna get us emails by shitting on that show.
well, somebody sent me an email when we talked about it last time that dragon is in a museum. Was it, or did you say that? It's
No,
a
I
museum
said
in
it's
Germany.
you can go and visit that ugly, terrifying white dog dragon.
Those special effects didn't hold up in the moment.
Yeah,
No,
but it was cute.
they were obsolete live. So anyway, Doug, The Neverending Story, Part 2, Genesis, the Regenesising, The Revenge of Begat.
Let's close it out.
Yeah, like so
Yeah.
many biblical and biblically themed stories, I think the real true impetus should be, let's just get this the fuck over with. So, yes, Genesis Part 2, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through the second half of the book of Genesis today and be done with it forever.
Hooray.
When last we left off, we had managed to slog our way through roughly the first half of the book of Genesis. We covered creation, the fall, the flood, the Tower of Babel, some impressive lifespan, some polytheism, and a whole lot of incest.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Well, look, Doug, when there are only 4 people and you want to make more, what are you going to do?
There's only 4 people unless you want to walk over there where there's apparently another city, which happens over
Right.
and over.
Right.
All of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
Just shh.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys just shh.
So we managed to get through the primeval history of the book, comprising the first 11 chapters, and put a pretty sizable dent in the ancestral history, comprising chapters 12 through 50.
Oh, fuck.
I know.
Really?
Yeah, it's a brutal book.
I'm so glad I was sick.
Oh, my God. We ended with the reveal that Abraham, formerly Abram, and Sarah, formerly Sarai, were definitely from different mothers, but the same father.
Skun dun dun.
So, now listener Jason wrote us to give some context on the names and their meanings. Abram in Hebrew it means many or multitude, which is a strange name for a person.
Yes.
But Abraham means father of a multitude, so that makes some kind of sense. I don't know why you just don't call him Abraham from the beginning or father of the multitude from the beginning, but that's not my problem.
Yeah.
Sarai means princess, and apparently so does Sarah, so great, thanks. Incidentally, Isaac means laughter because I guess his story is so much fun.
Really? It means laughter?
Yeah.
I know I'm going to laugh at it.
So Sarah, when she heard she was going to get pregnant, laughed. And so that's where that comes from.
Isaac is like, hey, Dad, what are you doing? Huh? What's that? Come on, you don't mean that, do you, Dad?
Jason has apparently, our listener Jason has apparently read this book in excess of 50 times.
Why?
Whatever
Jason,
stop, Jason.
calm down. What are you doing?
You've done enough.
He was on a moon base, and this was the only book there was.
Have you heard of the Twilight series? Come on, man.
Yeah, anything.
So, just to recap.
Danielle Steele wrote a wonderful series of books you might enjoy.
50
With quite a bit
Shades
of-
of anything but this.
Quite a bit of begatting as well. So.
I think after half of 50 Shades of Grey, I might go back to Genesis. After 25 Shades of Grey. So just to recap, Abraham raped his servant Hagar, whose son Ishmael would go on to be the progenitor of Muhammad and therefore Islam.
Yeah.
And then Isaac with his half-sister, who would go on to be the progenitor of Israel, and eventually Jesus and Christianity. Just worth noting that the provenance of the 3 great monotheistic religions are rape and incest.
Doy. I could have told you that without
very on brand. Very on brand. Yeah.
The first 20 chapters of this book have taken us from creation of the universe to Abraham. The next 30 chapters will take us from Abraham to Joseph, his great-grandson. So
30 chapters?
Yeah, let's just say the narrative slows down considerably at this point.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you don't.
No.
From the galloping clip it was at prior.
Well, yeah, it would sail through like 800-year-old people's lives. So
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
it was going quick for a minute.
Not a lot happens in an 800-year lifespan.
In order to prevent a mass exodus of listeners from this show, I'm going to stomp on the gas pedal pretty hard here.
Or guest hosts. Or co-hosts.
So let's pick up the narrative in chapter 21, where the very old Sarah finally conceives a son, and they name him Isaac.
Yay.
Sarah decides that Hagar and Ishmael need to get kicked out of the house because I guess she's a good guy. Here's what's crazy. Ishmael only exists because Sarah demanded that Abraham rape his slave.
Right.
And because Sarah and Abraham are half-brother and sister, Ishmael is not only her stepson, but her nephew that she's kicking out. So
And she's her own grandpa.
exactly. Chapter 22 is the story of the sacrifice of Isaac. This story is so well known that I will not dwell on it, except to say that it's a very short chapter, and the actual taking of Isaac, tying him up, and nearly gutting him takes only the first 16 verses. It's a very dry clinical recitation story, almost like a police report.
That's what the Bible is just. You go for thousands of pages or words without anything,
Right.
and then you finally get to a story you recognize, and it is 13 sentences, and then it's done.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And so
God wrestling with who was it? Jacob on the edge of the river. It just happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we will get to that.
Yeah.
Any hesitation or reluctance on the part of Abraham is editorial. And by the way, no mention whatever of Isaac's perspective on all of this.
No, who cares?
Sarah dies at 127 years old.
Oh, so young?
So young. Now, except for the fact that she is one of the most developed characters in the Bible, female characters in the Bible, we don't know much about Sarah, but what we do know is that she was a terrible person. So, sayonara, Sarah.
Well, she fit right in. She fit right into
exactly.
the culture of the time.
Servants of Abraham return to Mesopotamia to find a wife for Isaac that's not a dirty Canaanite. They settle on Rebekah. They don't know how old she is, but she's definitely a virgin. And in a very unexpected twist, Rebekah's mother and brother ask her for her consent to marry her off.
Weird.
Yeah.
What?
What's going on?
I know. It's weird. She says yes and returns to Canaan and marries Isaac. Rebekah, who initially was barren, then gives birth to twins, Esau and Jacob.
You know, everybody's literally barren until they have kids.
Is that true?
Every woman in the world is barren until they get pregnant.
Doesn't that mean unable to have children?
Well, no. I mean, clearly she wasn't barren because she did have children.
It's Schrodinger's fetus.
Yeah.
Okay, Jacob, by the way, means deceiver, and that's what we call foreshadowing.
Scuntundun.
Again, shout out to listener Jason.
Also, like, people would name their child Deceiver. I know, like, you're a baby. You don't know.
Exactly.
This little shit, I thought he was coming one way, he went the
This
other.
is my son John and my other son Failure. After a hard days of work in the fields, Esau enters Jacob's tent and begs for something to eat, to which Jacob agrees for the low, low price of his birthright, which Esau happily trades for some bread and lentils.
Yep.
Chapter 26 sees a famine in the land, causing Isaac to take his household to the land of Gerar. And for the third time in this cursed book, someone tells their wife to pretend to be their sister. Isaac tells Rebekah to pretend to be his sister instead of his wife. And for the third time, the king of the city finds out and is pissed. And notwithstanding his significant wealth, they expel him from the city.
I still maintain it's a good subterfuge. It's a good idea. I
suppose.
It's a great trick.
Now, neither Jacob's stealing of Esau's birthright nor Esau's marriage to a non-Hebrew seem to matter at all, because chapter 27 begins with an ailing Isaac begging Esau to hunt him some tasty venison so he can eat it and then pronounce his final blessing on him. So in spite of everything, Esau was going to inherit all the blessings of his father anyway, even though he sold his birthright. But while Esau is off hunting, Rebekah, without a moment's hesitation, hatches a plan that we've talked about to trick Isaac into giving his blessing to Jacob. She sends him off to make some stew while she finds some furs for him to wear in his presence. Because, you see, Isaac is essentially blind, and Esau was covered in hair like Robin Williams, while Jacob was as hairless and smooth as Jeff Bezos. So, the subterfuge works, and mistaking Jacob for Esau, Isaac gives all the blessings to the wrong son. When Esau returns and finds out what has happened, he plans to kill Jacob.
And as we've learned, tricks count.
Yes.
Even as a kid, I was like, how hairy do you have to be?
Right.
That either a sheep or a goat.
Literally, he used to walk into his father's tent like...
Yeah, that is a fur-bearing animal. That is like... Their fur is harvested to make everything.
I know,
that's
exactly.
The stupidest. I'm sorry.
It's so stupid.
I've detected a plot hole. But anyway, go on.
So while out hunting for a wife, Jacob has a dream. It's the famous Jacob's ladder that angels are using to scale up and down from heaven. That's kind of it. In this dream, God
there's kind of no anything to that, right?
There's not really any metaphor to it. It's just kind of there.
Until they invent Jacob's escalator, which will be cool.
And then Trump.
So if you were just thinking, it's been a while since rape and incest made an appearance, I give you chapter 29. Jacob sees the youngest daughter of his uncle Laban, named Rachel, the brother of his mother, and falls for her. He promises 7 years of service to earn the hand of Rachel, but on his wedding night it turns out that Laban had sneakily put his oldest daughter Leah in Jacob's bed, and without noticing, he consummated the marriage with the wrong sister, also known as rape.
Yeah, because I generally don't notice who's in the bed with me.
I just stumble in drunk and fuck whatever's there.
Old Testament
That's
antics.
a half-truth.
Classic.
And again, tricks count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laban demands 7 more years of service for Rachel, and then he can have both sisters. Jacob fulfills the additional years and gets Rachel, but wouldn't you know it, she's barren.
Oh.
Just to be clear, Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob have all married barren women who eventually bear children. So this is either some heavy-handed metaphor or Aaron Brockovich needs to test the water supply. Leah, the older sister of Jacob, or the older sister who Jacob apparently hates, still bears him sons Reuben, Simeon, and Levi. Chapter 30 might as well be its own channel on Pornhub. A distraught, childless Rachel sends her servant to be raped by Jacob multiple times and bears him two more sons. Not to be outdone, Leah sends her servant in to be raped by Jacob multiple times, bearing him 2 more sons. By the way, weirdly, both of these sex slaves have names, Bilhah and Zilpah.
Yeah.
Finally, Rachel has a son and calls him Joseph. Oh, chapter 32. Jacob decides to return and try to beg forgiveness from Esau, who's not having it and sets out with 400 men to kill Jacob.
Right.
Jacob prepares a gift for Esau to try and temper his anger. The gift consists of 200 she-goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milch camels and their colts, 40 kine, 10 bulls, 20 she-asses, and 10 foals. Which honestly...
No he-asses? Where are the he-asses?
It seems like more trouble than it's worth.
What do you get for the guy that has everything? It's like... we all face this conundrum, around Christmas or a birthday. It's like, a pen, a watch, I don't know.
She-goat.
How about 20? Yeah. How about 40 kine? So while he's waiting to confront Esau, he, all of a sudden, is wrestling with someone all night long. Yeah. This is the angel that Mark referenced.
You know how you're chilling? You're like on the way to somewhere, and then you're just wrestling with the dude.
Bump into a dude. And
you're like, oh, let's wrestle.
Let's grapple.
Oh, that's
a grapple.
The wrestling's on.
It happens so suddenly in the narrative that if you just blinked for half a second, you could completely miss it.
Yeah, honestly, I had to go like, wait, whoa, was that?
Yeah.
So as the sun rises, neither Jacob nor the stranger have the upper hand. The match finally comes to an end when they touch in the hollow of each other's thigh. Okay.
How do you do that?
Don't know.
And this is,
I think Uncle Mark
the
knows
origin of all BYU sex, not sex. Yeah. You're docking, you're floating, you're BYU float.
Can I just touch the hollow of your thigh?
Yeah.
Please?
Not anymore. Thanks, me too. Jacob demands a blessing from this.
I don't even know what that means.
It's about time Me Too caught up to the Old Testament.
Yeah, keep going.
Jacob demands a blessing from this stranger who renames him Israel, meaning God contends.
Because if you wrestle someone, they get to name you.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, also, if you shouldn't you have to win?
No, shut up.
Yeah,
shouldn't the winner get to rename somebody? It's like we fight to a draw and get to rename each other. The fuck is that?
I would love/hate to live in the society where that was just the way of things. Yeah. If I can wrestle somebody to the ground, I can call him Nancy from now on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
hello, Jacob. It's Nancy now. Don't even ask. I had a crazy day.
Did you wrestle somebody?
I got jumped by the river.
So, in chapter 33, Esau finally confronts Jacob, but overcome with love, hugs and kisses him and accepts him back into the land.
Aww.
So the answer to the question, who are the good guys in this book? Apparently Esau is the only good person in this book. Chapter 34 begins with some more rape. Hamor the Hivite rapes Dinah, the daughter of Leah. This rape would kick off a cycle of violence and mayhem that
allegedly.
And the word they use is defile. The cycle of violence kicked off by this rape will last to this day. So Hamor demanded that Dinah now marry his son Shechem. Dinah's brothers Simeon and Levi initially agreed to the marriage if every male in the city is circumcised. For some reason, Hamor agrees, and while the men are all convalescing, Simeon and Levi kill them all. Not only do they kill the men, they sack the city and take all the women and children as sex slaves.
It's a great ploy.
Yeah.
Wow. You thought it couldn't get worse than getting the tip of your dick cut off.
This will become a well-exercised muscle going forward. So, the sons of Jacob by 4 different women are as follows, and not in order: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher. These would go on to be the 12 tribes of Israel. Later on, Joseph's sons Manasseh and Ephraim are added to the list. Not clear how that still equals 12, but okay.
Shut up.
Right.
It's new math.
So from this point
Common
on,
Core. You don't understand it.
From this point on, the whole rest of the book is the story of Joseph, his colorful coat, and his exploits in Egypt. This story is very, very boring, so let's just recap it.
So let's make a musical about it.
Yeah, exactly. Joseph was the apple of his father's eye, prompting his brothers to sell him into slavery and fake his death.
As you do.
As you do.
That's what they did with you, Doug, isn't it?
I wish. Jesus.
Well,
sold into slavery would have been such a step up for me.
We'll cover it another time.
Being eventually sold into Egypt, Joseph rises through the ranks mostly because of his ability to interpret dreams. He is eventually called upon to interpret the dream of the Pharaoh, which he does. The interpretation is that there will be 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. He convinces Pharaoh to store up 1/5 of everything for the impending famine. Impressed, the Pharaoh puts Joseph in charge of this effort, making him one of the most powerful people in Egypt.
Until they have $100 billion stored
away
for no reason.
And this story led United States Cabinet Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Ben Carson, to publicly state that the pyramids of Giza were built by Joseph to store grain.
If only there was some way we could see inside.
Yeah. Well, they're enormous storage capacity.
Oh, my God.
Again, I can't think of a less useful storage shape than a pyramid, but that's me.
Well, an upside-down one would be good.
At least a hollow one would be good, but they're not.
I mean, look in your closet. How many storage boxes do you have right now shaped like a pyramid? But that's just me.
I'm just saying it's a funnel. If gravity worked the other way, it'd be great for like just releasing some out.
Then you got a hopper. And then you
that's
can
what I'm saying. There you go.
Yeah.
So a quick side note, chapter 38 has the famous story of Judah's children, and Onan. Committed some unspecified crime for which God just fucking kills him.
Right. So Onan straight up just offs the bitch.
God says boom. So Onan takes his wife, but fearing getting her pregnant, spills his load on the floor, prompting God to kill him too. So, don't masturbate.
Every sperm is sacred.
So as the story unfolds, there is intrigue, incest, and deception. The famine arrives and becomes so bad that it hits Canaan, forcing the remaining sons of Jacob to go to Egypt and barter for food. And wouldn't you know it, they end up at the feet of Joseph, although he doesn't reveal his identity for a little while.
Because he's covered himself in camel hair.
He toys with them for a bit until he finally reveals himself and forgives them. They have a grand old party, and Joseph invites the whole house of Jacob to come and live out the famine in Egypt where he can provide for them. The entire house of Jacob migrates to Egypt. Jacob pronounces his final blessings on the heads of his children, and he dies. The whole book ends with Joseph dying at the age of 110. Seems sprightly. So now that the table's set, the entire house of Jacob, which is now the house of Israel, is living in Egypt. The end. Of course, by verse 11 of Exodus chapter 1, the Pharaoh puts them all in bondage, but that's a story for another day.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's it.
We did it?
We did it.
Oh, my God.
I just freely admit, and listeners who might want to write in, I did skip a lot of things. I skipped over fair amounts of the narrative.
Listen, you didn't skip over any more than all of the pastors who have ever taught Christianity.
Point.
Yeah.
So, again, just to reiterate the messages in this book, and this is the partial list from last week with some augmentation. Man is made in God's image. Man is separate from and has dominion over all life on earth and earth itself. Introduction of the concept of original sin and how it's the bitch's fault. Marriage is only for men and women. Women come from men and are subservient. Black and brown people are descendants of Cain and cursed. Acceptability of polygamy, advocacy of genocide, circumcision, a complete endorsement of slavery, and the acceptability of incest and fear of masturbation. Thanks, Genesis.
Yay!
Yeah, it keeps on giving.
It's a good book. It's the good book, really, when you think about it.
And it's in the bin.
All right.
It's in the bin. All right, everybody. Thanks, Doug. With that very clear narrative, let's move on.